"Open this door right now or we're breaking it down." The voice outside my front door didn't ask, it commanded. 3 men in black tactical vests stood on my porch at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, flashlights cutting through the November darkness. The one in front, stocky build, gray beard, mirrored sunglasses at night, slammed his fist against the wood hard enough to rattle the frame. "HOA, security enforcement. We have a warrant for immediate property inspection." My 15-year-old daughter Megan grabbed my arm from behind, her nails digging into my skin hard. "Dad, who are they?" I stared through the peephole at the silver badges, glinting on their chests, at the official-looking patches on their uniforms, at the way they stood with practiced authority. Something was wrong. Dead wrong. The lead officer's badge read Community Protection Unit in letters that looked laser-printed, not issued by any legitimate agency. His radio crackled with static that sounded rehearsed, too clean. And those mirrored sunglasses at 9:47 p.m. in November? Nobody wears those except people trying to look intimidating. I'd spent 17 years as a detective with Phoenix Police Department before medical retirement 6 months ago. I'd chased drug runners, worked gang cases, spent enough time around real cops to know the difference between legitimate authority and someone playing dress-up. These weren't cops. These were predators testing their prey. And they'd just made a critical mistake. They'd chosen the one house in Timber Ridge Estates, belonging to a man who'd spent nearly 2 decades learning exactly how criminals think. My name is Jackson Cole. And these bastards were about to learn that the worst door they could have knocked on was mine. 3 weeks earlier, I'd packed everything my daughter and I owned into a U-Haul and driven north from Phoenix to Prescott Valley, Arizona, 30 miles south of Flagstaff, nestled in high desert, where the air was thin and the night sky had countless stars. The medical retirement had been inevitable after the knee injury bullet shattered the joint during a traffic stop. Department doctors said I'd never pass the physical fitness requirements again. The psychologist said I needed to decompress from work stress. It meant I was burned out and needed to get away from the job. "Dad, can we go somewhere quiet?" Megan had asked one morning while I iced my knee and swallowed pain pills with coffee. Like somewhere boring where nothing ever happens? That question broke something in me. My 14-year-old daughter shouldn't have to beg for boring. So we ended up in Timber Ridge Estates planned community with matching mailboxes, HOA-approved paint colors, and lawns maintained to suburban standards. The kind of place where the biggest drama was probably someone's trash can being visible from the street, 15 minutes past collection time, perfect for a burned-out cop trying to remember what peace felt like, right? The first 2 weeks were exactly what we needed. I fixed squeaky hinges, patched drywall, set up Megan's room with her posters and desk. We grilled burgers in the backyard while she told me about her new school, about normal teenage things that didn't involve waiting up until 3 a.m. wondering if her dad was coming home. For the first time since her mother left us 3 years ago, I watched Megan relax. The tension in her shoulders eased. That alone made the move worth every penny. Then, on our third evening, I was on the back porch with a beer, watching sunset paint the mountains purple and gold, when I heard it, the low electric hum of a golf cart rolling through the neighborhood. 3 men sat in that cart, all wearing matching black polo shirts with silver lettering, HOA Security Patrol. They swept LED spotlights across driveways and front yards with coordinated movements. Not neighborhood watch volunteers, these guys moved like they'd worn uniforms before, understood tactics and positioning. The cart slowed as it passed my house. One of them, stocky guy with a shaved head, leaned forward to read my house number, said something into his radio, voice too quiet to hear. Then the cart moved on. Every instinct I'd developed over 17 years started warning me. Next morning, I walked across the street to talk to Tom Brennan, retired high school teacher who'd lived in Timber Ridge for 5 years. He was watering roses. "Morning," I called out. He pulled out one earbud, smiled. "Jackson, right? Settling in, okay? Good, yeah. Quick question, what's the deal with the security patrol? Guys in the golf cart?" Tom's smile faltered. "Oh, them. Yeah, they started showing up about 2 months ago. HOA hired some new enforcement program to keep the neighborhood safe." "Safe from what?" "This is Timber Ridge, not a high-crime area." Tom shrugged, but I caught the nervous edge. Beats me. Most folks think it's overkill, but the HOA president pushed it through. Said property values would increase with visible security. He glanced around before adding quietly, "Between you and me, they give me the creeps. They ask too many questions." That evening, the golf cart returned. Different drivers. Same cold stares behind mirrored sunglasses. Same coordinated movements. And once again, they slowed in front of my house, lingering just long enough to make it obvious. Old habits kicked in. I found myself noting details, license plate numbers, shift change patterns, which houses they stopped at most often. My brain was building patterns again, because that's what cops do when they can't stop being cops. On the fifth night, I was taking trash to the curb when the golf cart appeared at the end of my driveway. Just sat there, engine idling, while the passenger, same stocky guy with the shaved head, leaned out. "Evening, sir." His voice was flat, practiced. "Conducting routine compliance check." Compliance with what? I kept my voice neutral, but my hands were already calculating distances and angles. The guy smiled without warmth. HOA regulations. All residents are expected to cooperate with security measures. We're here to keep everyone safe. Safe from what? He didn't answer. Just gave me a long, measuring look. Then the cart rolled off. Inside, Megan was doing homework at the kitchen table. She looked up when I came back in. "Who was that?" "Neighborhood security," I said, forcing calm. But my hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline from a threat I couldn't quite define. That night, I stood at my bedroom window long after Megan went to sleep, watching the street below. The golf cart returned around midnight, stopped in front of my house for 15 seconds. Headlights pointed directly at my bedroom window. When predators start circling, it's never random. They're testing you, measuring response, deciding whether you're prey or something that'll fight back. The next morning, I found it taped to my front door, a notice on thick, expensive paper with the Timber Ridge HOA logo embossed at the top. Violation notice. Section 12, C. Unauthorized exterior modifications. Immediate compliance required. Failure to remedy within 72 hours will result in enforcement action and assessment of fines up to $500 per day. I read it 3 times. My detective's brain cataloging inconsistencies. First, I hadn't made any exterior modifications. House looked exactly like when I bought it. Second, I'd reviewed the HOA charter when we moved in, and there was no Section 12C. Rules jumped from 12B directly to 13A. Third, Security Enforcement Division wasn't real. The HOA had a board and property management company, but no enforcement division. Someone was using official-looking paperwork to legitimize something illegitimate. I dialed the number. It rang twice before a smooth male voice answered. HOA Security. Timber Ridge Division. Background noise was wrong, too quiet, no office sounds. "Yeah, this is Jackson Cole at 2547 Desert Willow. Got a notice about some violation? Mr. Cole." The voice shifted, became more practiced. "Your property has been flagged for unauthorized satellite dish installation." I looked at my roof. No satellite dish. Never had been. "I don't have a satellite dish." A calculated pause. "That's not what our inspection report indicates, sir. We have photographic documentation." "Then show me the photos." Another pause. "You'll need to schedule formal review with the enforcement team. We can send officers to your residence this evening." "I'll come to your office." "We don't maintain public office hours. All inspections are conducted on site." "What's your name?" The line went dead. I stood there on my porch, the bogus notice trembling in my hand, watching a jogger pass by like nothing was wrong. But everything was wrong. This wasn't about satellite dishes. This was a probe, testing how I'd respond to fake authority. I'd seen similar scams targeting elderly people or immigrants. I went inside, fired up my laptop, pulled up the real Timber Ridge HOA website. I found contact information for the HOA board. I typed, "Received violation notice regarding unauthorized modifications. Can you confirm this came from official HOA board?" Notice references Section 12C and Enforcement Division. I can't locate in governing documents. Hit send. By noon, I had my answer from Barbara Mitchell, HOA board secretary. "Mr. Cole, there is no enforcement division operating under HOA authority. We've received several similar reports over past 8 weeks. We are working with local law enforcement to investigate. Please disregard such notices and report them to Yavapai County Sheriff's Office. Do not engage with anyone claiming to represent HOA security." I read that 3 times, pulse accelerating. So it was official, those patrols weren't HOA at all. They were imposters operating under false authority, with access to private resident information. That meant someone inside had legitimate access to HOA databases and was feeding them information. That afternoon, I did what I do best. I watched. Parked 3 blocks away, walked back through yards, set up where I could observe without being obvious. Around 3 p.m., one of the fake patrols rolled through. Same golf cart, different operators. They stopped at a ranch house 4 doors down at a young couple's property. The man who answered looked nervous, shoulders hunched, holding what looked like a checkbook. I watched through my phone's zoom camera, snapping photos. The security officer nodded, took an envelope from the homeowner, slipped it smoothly into his vest pocket. No receipt, no documentation, just cash changing hands under guise of official business. I zoomed in on the badge. Logo showed a silver eagle with text, Community Integrity Unit, Arizona licensed. Quick Google search pulled up nothing. Ghost company. That night, after Megan was asleep, I sat at my kitchen table and spread out everything I had: the fake violation notice, photos of the cash exchange, badge logo, screenshots of the HOA email. I pulled out an old case notebook and started building a timeline. The pattern was clear. They'd been operating nearly 3 months, long enough to establish routine residents accepted as normal. Fake notices created paper trails that looked legitimate. Cash collections were untraceable. Classic organized crime playbook: establish false legitimacy, exploit information gaps, create compliance through intimidation. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd targeted a cop. I picked up my phone, called the one person who'd understand. Detective Sarah Mitchell, Phoenix PD Major Crimes, had been my partner for 6 years. Jackson? Her voice was surprised, but warm. Thought you moved to nowhere to escape this life? Yeah, well, the life followed me. I spent 20 minutes walking her through everything. When I finished, silence stretched for several seconds. Jesus, Jack, you sure about this? Could just be overzealous HOA volunteers. Sarah, my gut says these guys aren't volunteers. They're organized, professional, and they're running a con, pulling in serious money. Send me the image. I'll run it tonight. 40 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Sarah's text was short. Call me. Now. I stepped onto the back porch where Megan couldn't hear. What'd you find? That badge logo? Sarah's voice was tight. Matches a group investigated in Tucson 18 months ago. Same tactics: fake HOA security, bogus notices, cash extortion. They hit 2 subdivisions before witnesses stopped cooperating, and the case went cold. Jack, these aren't amateurs. I looked through the sliding door at Megan, safe inside, doing homework. They'll escalate, I said quietly. Once they've milked compliant residents, they'll target the ones who resist. Which means you just put a target on your back by not paying. I knew she was right. That night, I checked every lock twice, made sure my service weapon Glock 19 I'd carried 15 years was loaded in the quick access safe beside my bed, tested security cameras, making sure they covered every approach, and I tried to convince myself this was just precaution, not preparation for war. But when predators realize you've seen through their disguise, they don't back down. They double down. The morning after my call with Sarah, I found another notice on my door. Same thick paper, same embossed logo, but different. Final warning: failure to comply with Section 12C will result in property inspection and legal action. HOA Security Enforcement will conduct mandatory inspection on November 15 at 7 p.m. Resident presence required. Someone had drawn a red line across the top. I photographed it, logged it, added it to my growing file. Then I did what cops do. I went door to door. Started with Tom Brennan. This time his wife Linda answered, eyes red from crying. Linda, everything okay? She glanced over her shoulder nervously. Tom's not here right now. Mrs. Brennan? Tom appeared behind her, wearing the same flannel shirt for 3 days straight. His face looked 10 years older. Come in, Jackson. Their kitchen table was covered with papers. Not a few dozens. All bearing that fake HOA logo. Jesus, I breathed. How long? 2 months, Tom said quietly. Started with our mailbox being wrong, shade of black. Then porch light, non-compliant. Then bushes needed trimming. Every time we paid the fine, another notice appeared within a week. How much have you paid? Linda's voice cracked. $3,200. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Did you call the real HOA board? We tried, Tom said. They said notices are fake, that we should call the sheriff. So we did. Deputies came out, took a report, but without catching them in the act, there's nothing to prosecute. I spent the next 3 hours going house to house. 8 families had paid money to the fake patrol amounts, ranging from $800 to over $4,000. Most were elderly or recent immigrants, people conditioned to fear authority and comply with official-looking demands. Some had stopped answering their doors, keeping curtains drawn. And then there was the Ortega house. Luis Ortega, mid-40s, worked night shifts. His wife Maria told me, whispering like walls had ears, that Luis had been visited by two men in a white van 3 days ago. They'd said there was a compliance issue requiring him to come to their office for processing. He'd gone with them. She hadn't seen him since. "Did you file a missing persons report?" I asked. Maria's eyes filled with tears. Police said he probably went to stay with his brother, that there was no evidence of foul play. But Jackson, Luis wouldn't leave without telling me. I knew she was right. That afternoon, I drove to Luis's house when nobody was around. Front door was unlocked. First, red flag. Inside, everything screamed wrong. Plate of half-eaten food on the counter. Coffee mug had grown mold, TV remote on the floor, and in the corner, partially hidden behind the couch, a folder. Same embossed HOA letterhead, stamped in red ink. Paid in full. Case closed. Underneath, handwritten notes. Subject non-compliant. Relocated per Protocol 7. I photographed everything with shaking hands, rage building. Protocol 7. They had protocols. This wasn't opportunistic scam. This was organized, systematic, and they just escalated from extortion to kidnapping. I called Sarah again. "I need you to run a missing persons check. Luis Ortega, Prescott Valley, reported missing 3 days ago. Keys clicking. Nothing in the system, Jack. No report filed. His wife said she reported it. Then someone killed the report before it got entered. You need to be careful. If they've got someone inside the sheriff's department..." I know. I hung up and sat in my truck, staring at that folder. Relocated per Protocol 7. Where? Why? That night I made Megan stay at her friend Ashley's house. "Dad, what's going on?" Her voice had that edge teenagers get when they know you're lying. "Just neighborhood stuff I need to handle. You'll be safer at Ashley's for a couple days." Safer? Now she was scared. "Megan." I gripped her shoulders gently. "I promise I'll explain soon. But right now, I need you to trust me and stay somewhere they don't know to look." That scared her more than anything. But she went. At 7 p.m., exactly when the mandatory inspection notice specified, I was ready. Lights off. Security cameras recording. Service weapon on the coffee table next to my old badge. They arrived at 7:14 p.m. Not the golf cart, a white panel van, no windows. 3 men got out, all wearing black tactical vests with silver badges. Stocky one with shaved head led the way, flanked by 2 others. They walked to my door like they owned it. The knock was hard, aggressive. HOA security, open up for mandatory inspection. I stayed silent, watching through the peephole, hand resting on my weapon. "Mr. Cole, you have 30 seconds to comply before we exercise our authority to enter." I waited. Let them commit. 20 seconds passed. Then the stocky one nodded to the guy with the crowbar. That's when they stopped being fake authorities and became home invaders. The crowbar hit my door with a crack that echoed through the quiet neighborhood. Wood splintered. Deadbolt held, but the frame started giving. They hit it again, harder. The chain snapped. My hand closed around my Glock's grip, muscle memory from 1,000 hours at the range, making the movement smooth. The door burst open. 3 men flooded into my living room, tactical flashlights cutting through darkness. The stocky leader swept his light across the room while partners fanned out with precision. "Violation of community code," the leader barked, voice full of false authority. "You're coming with us for processing." I stayed perfectly still in shadows beside the fireplace, gun at low ready, waiting, watching. The guy with the clipboard started rifling through papers on my coffee table. "Where's your permit documentation?" The third man, younger with a neck tattoo, headed toward the hallway, toward bedrooms, toward where Megan's room was. Thank God she wasn't here. That's when I stepped out of shadows. "Gentlemen," my voice was calm, flat, cop voice. "You're trespassing on private property. I suggest you leave before this gets complicated." All 3 spun toward me, flashlights blinding, but I'd positioned myself so lights backlit them while I stayed in shadow. Basic tactical advantage. Stocky leader recovered first, puffing out his chest. "We have authority under HOA covenant. You have jack shit." I cut him off. And we both know it. So here's how this plays. You leave right now. I don't press charges for breaking and entering, or what? Slick-haired one stepped forward, hand moving toward his belt where I could see the outline of a pistol. You're going to stop 3 armed security officers? I smiled, cold and without warmth. I'm going to stop 3 men impersonating officers while committing home invasion. Big difference. Leader's hand moved toward his weapon. I wouldn't, I said quietly, raising my Glock so they could see it clearly. Because unlike you, I'm actually trained to use this. Phoenix PD, 17 years, major crimes, which means I know exactly how this ends if you go for those guns. The air changed. Predators realized they've cornered something more dangerous. Leader's hand froze. His eyes showed the first flicker of uncertainty. You're bluffing, slick-haired one said, but his voice wavered. Am I? I pulled out my retired badge with my free hand, let it catch the light. Jackson Cole, detective, 1st grade, retired 6 months ago. Still have a lot of friends in law enforcement who'd love to nail a crew running fake HOA scams. And I'm guessing you really don't want me making those calls. Silence. Then the neck tattoo kid bolted for the door, abandoning his partners. I let him go. Better 1 runner than 3 idiots forcing me to shoot them in my living room. Leader and slick-haired partner exchanged a look. This isn't over, Leader growled. You don't know who you're dealing with. Sure I do, I said. Small-time criminals playing dress-up, thinking fake badges make you dangerous. But you just broke into a cop's house, so I know exactly who I'm dealing with. Question is, do you? They backed toward the door slowly. When they reached the threshold, Leader stopped. You should have paid the fine, Cole. Would have been easier. Probably. I agreed, but easy never was my style. They disappeared into the night. Van engine roared, tires squealing as they fled. I stood in my destroyed doorway, breathing hard. Adrenaline making my hands shake. Then I did what I should have done from the beginning. I called 911, Yavapai County Emergency Services. I need to report a home invasion. 3 armed suspects forced entry at 2547 Desert Willow Drive. Suspects fled in white panel van, no plates, heading east on Copper Ridge Road. Homeowner is Jackson Cole, retired Phoenix PD. No injuries. Suspects displayed fake law enforcement credentials. Say again, fake law enforcement credentials? Correct. This is connected to an ongoing fraud investigation. I need units here now. Stay on the line, sir. Units are rolling. 8 minutes later, 2 Yavapai County Sheriff's cruisers screamed into the cul-de-sac, light bars painting the neighborhood in red and blue. 4 deputies emerged, weapons drawn. Jackson Cole, come out with your hands visible. I set my gun inside, stepped out with hands raised, badge case in left hand. Retired Phoenix PD? I'm the homeowner who called it in! Lead deputy woman in her 40s with sergeant stripes and hard eyes approached cautiously. Detective Cole? That's right. She lowered her weapon, waved her team to stand down. Sergeant Rachel Morrison. We've been trying to track these bastards for 2 months. She looked at my splintered door and something like satisfaction crossed her face. Looks like they finally picked the wrong house. They're escalating, I said. This wasn't just intimidation. They were ready to take me somewhere. And I think I know where. Morrison's expression darkened. We've had 2 missing persons reports in surrounding subdivisions, both last seen with fake HOA security. We think they're connected, but can't prove it without... Luis Ortega? I interrupted. Timber Ridge resident, disappeared 3 days ago. His wife filed a report that never made it into the system. Morrison pulled out her phone, started typing. How do you know that? Because I'm a cop. And because something's rotting in this neighborhood that goes beyond fake badges and extortion. She studied me. You want in on this investigation? These bastards broke into my home, Sergeant. I'm already in. Over the next 2 hours, I walked Morrison and her team through everything. The timeline, fake notices, families who'd paid, photos of badge logos and cash exchanges, Luis Ortega's empty house with that damning folder. By the time I finished, Morrison looked like she wanted to punch something. This is bigger than we thought, she muttered. We were treating it like local scam. But if they've got protocols, if they're coordinated enough to suppress police reports, they've got someone inside. I finished. Someone with access to county systems who's been running interference. Morrison's jaw tightened. I'm going to make some calls. Detective Cole, don't leave town. Wasn't planning on it. After deputies left and crime scene techs finished photographing everything, I sat on my couch in darkness, staring at my destroyed door. Somewhere out there, the men who'd invaded my home were regrouping, making new plans. and somewhere else, Luis Ortega was missing. I pulled out my phone, called Megan. Hey, sweetheart, everything's okay, but you need to stay at Ashley's a few more days. Dad? What happened? Her voice was small, scared. Some bad people made a mistake, but it's handled. I promise. You promise you're okay? I promise. After we hung up, Sergeant Morrison approached. Hell of a case, Detective Cole. We couldn't have broken this without you. I was just protecting my family. You did more than that. She handed me a business card. We could use someone like you. Civilian consultant position with major crimes. Part-time, flexible hours, decent pay. We get cases like this more often than you'd think. Organized fraud, targeting HOA communities, elder exploitation, financial crimes. Your experience would be invaluable. I looked at the card, feeling something shift inside me. I'll think about it. You do that. She started to walk away, then turned back. Cole, what you did today, that's the job. Not the badge or the uniform, but standing between predators and prey. Some guys never figure that out, but you've always known. After she left, Detective Torres appeared with a beer. Jackson Cole, he said, extending his hand, heard about you from Phoenix. They said you were one of the good ones. I corrected. I'm retired. Uh-huh. He slid a thick manila folder across the table. So retired, you're building case files in your kitchen and getting your door kicked in by organized criminals. I opened the folder. Inside were surveillance photos, witness statements, financial records. Torres had been working this for months. How'd you get pulled into this? I asked. Started 8 months ago, Torres said, sipping coffee. Woman named Patricia Hendricks, 83, died of a heart attack in her home. Neighbors found her 3 days later. Nothing unusual except one thing: she had a stack of HOA violation notices on her table, over 40 of them, demanding nearly $18,000. Jesus. Yeah. Her son came to collect belongings, said his mother had been terrified last few months, said men in uniforms kept coming by, threatening legal action. She'd emptied her savings, paying them. The stress literally killed her. Torres pulled out another photo. Her son hired a lawyer, tried to sue the HOA. That's when we discovered none of those notices were real. The HOA board had never issued them. Signatures were forged. But by then, the money was gone, and Patricia was dead. Exactly. And when we started digging, we found a pattern. 3 other subdivisions in Yavapai County hit by the same scam. Fake security patrols, bogus notices, elderly victims paying thousands. We estimate they've pulled in over $400,000. I let out a low whistle. That's organized crime with infrastructure, which is where it gets interesting. Torres pulled out a business card. Sentinel Community Solutions, protecting your property values. I ran the company, registered in Nevada as LLC, but address is a mailbox service. Officers listed are all fake names. Complete ghost. So how do we find them? We don't. We let them find us. Torres leaned back. Jackson, these guys operate by pattern. They hit a neighborhood, milk it 2 to 3 months, then vanish before law enforcement builds a case. But they made a mistake with you. I didn't pay. Exactly. You challenged their authority. They escalated to home invasion. That's desperation behavior. They're not moving on yet. There's still money to extract from Timber Ridge, which means they'll try again. Let them, I said quietly. Next time, we'll be ready. But before we could set the trap, everything accelerated. That night, around 11 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Text message. You should have cooperated, detective. Last chance to make this right. Respond within 24 hours, or your daughter learns what happens to people who cost us money. My blood went ice cold. They just threatened Megan. I screenshot it, sent it to Torres, then stared at that message, with hands shaking, not from fear, from pure rage. These faceless cowards hiding behind fake badges had just crossed the only line that mattered. 30 minutes later, my phone rang. The voice was calm, educated, no regional accent, professional. Mr. Cole, I hear you've been causing problems for our community enhancement program. Your fake security scam, you mean? A soft chuckle. I prefer to think of it as privatized governance. But semantics aside, you've disrupted operations, made yourself a liability. Good. I'm offering you a choice. Accept a consultant position we pay well for people with your skill set. Former law enforcement, investigative background, very valuable. Or continue this crusade and discover what we do to people who cost us money. We know where your daughter goes to school. I think I'll take option 3, I said. There is no option 3. Sure, there is. I dismantle your operation, put you and everyone working for you in prison, and make sure every law enforcement agency in Arizona knows exactly how your scam works. Silence. Then, you have 24 hours to reconsider. After that, we solve problems the way we always do. The line went dead. I called Torres immediately. They just threatened my daughter. We move now. Jack, we need proper authorization. Now, Torres, or I handle this myself, and you can read about it when I'm done. Long pause. I'll make the calls. Be ready at dawn. I hung up and stared out my window at the quiet neighborhood. But the predators had made their final mistake. When you threaten a cop's kid, you don't just make an enemy. You make a promise, and I was about to keep mine. But I'd made a critical error in my rage. I'd underestimated how desperate these people had become. At 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed with a call from Maria Ortega. Her voice was panicked, barely coherent. Jackson, they just called me. They said they have Luis. They said if I don't pay them $15,000 by tomorrow night, they'll... She broke down sobbing. Maria, listen to me. Where are they keeping him? I don't know. They wouldn't say. They just gave me an account number and said to wire the money or I'd never see him again. My hands were shaking as I wrote down the details. Don't wire anything yet. I'm going to get him back. I promise. I hung up and immediately called Torres. They've got Luis Ortega and they're ransoming him. This just became a kidnapping case with an active hostage situation. Jesus Christ. Torres was instantly awake, all business. Did they give a location? No, but they're getting sloppy, desperate. They're trying to extract final payment before they run, which means Luis is probably somewhere close. They won't risk transporting him far. What are you thinking? I pulled up a map of Timber Ridge on my laptop. There are 3 foreclosed properties in this subdivision, bank-owned, sitting empty, perfect staging locations. If I were running this operation, I'd use one as a temporary holding site. That's a lot of guesswork, Jack. It's all we've got, and we're running out of time. I'll get Morrison in 2 units? We hit all 3 locations simultaneously at dawn. But Jackson, if you're wrong, we've tipped our hand and they'll vanish with Ortega. I'm not wrong. Dawn came cold and clear. Torres had assembled a small task force, Sergeant Morrison, 6 deputies, and me riding in an unmarked vehicle with my old badge clipped to my belt and my service weapon loaded. We split into 3 teams, each assigned to one of the foreclosed properties. Torres and I took the largest house, a 2-story at the edge of the development that backed up to open desert. We approached on foot, using early morning shadows for cover. The house looked abandoned, overgrown yard, faded for sale sign, windows dark, but they're partially hidden behind the detached garage, a white panel van. Torres saw it, same time I did. He keyed his radio, voice barely a whisper. Target Alpha has white van on premises. Moving to establish perimeter. We approached from opposite sides, weapons drawn, using hand signals developed over decades of tactical operations. As we got closer, I heard voices inside the house. Male, arguing. Should have cut our losses after that cop. Shut up. One more payout from the Mexican's wife, and we're done. We ghost this place. Set up in Flagstaff. What about Cole? Cole's a problem we solve after we get paid. Then he gets the same treatment as... I didn't wait to hear the rest. Torres and I hit the door simultaneously. He kicked it in while I went through. Gun raised. 17 years of training taking over. Sheriff's Department, show me your hands. The scene inside froze. 3 men, the stocky leader, another I didn't recognize, and a third who looked barely 20. They'd been standing around a table covered with fake HOA documents, stacks of cash, and a laptop. And in the corner, zip-tied to a chair with duct tape over his mouth, Luis Ortega. For half a second, nobody moved. Then the young one went for a gun on the table. Don't! I shouted, but he was already moving. Torres fired once. The young guy went down hard, screaming, clutching his shoulder. The other 2 raised their hands immediately, dropping to their knees. Don't shoot! We're done! We're done! Morrison and her team poured through the back door, securing the suspects while I rushed to Luis. I cut the zip ties with my pocket knife. Luis? I'm Jackson Cole. Maria sent me. You're safe now. He yanked the tape off his mouth, gasping. They were going to kill me. After they got the money, they were going to... He broke down, and I just held him while deputies cleared the rest of the house. Torres was already on his phone, coordinating with the other teams. We got him. All 3 suspects in custody. Hostage recovered safe. Send ambulance for gunshot wound, non-fatal. I looked around the room while medics worked on Luis. The table was a treasure trove of evidence, fake badges, blank violation notices, financial records showing payments from dozens of victims, a burner phone with text messages, and a notebook, open to a page with my name written at the top and a notation, priority target, eliminate after final collections. Torres saw me staring at it. They were planning to kill you. Yeah, I felt cold inside, but they didn't. The interrogations took most of the day. The stocky leader, real name Marcus Webb, former HOA property manager fired 18 months ago, broke within 2 hours once Torres explained the charges he was facing. Look, it started small, Webb said, looking tired in the interview room. I'd just been fired, blacklisted from property management. I knew how HOAs worked, knew most people never read their governing documents, knew they'd comply with anything that looked official. So you started a fake enforcement patrol, Torres said. Just me and 2 buddies. At first, we'd send violation notices, collect a few $100, easy money from people too scared or too lazy to verify. But then it worked so well, we expanded, hired more guys, hit more neighborhoods. And when people didn't pay, I asked, from where I stood against the wall. Webb wouldn't meet my eyes. Most people paid. But the ones who didn't, we had to make examples, otherwise the whole thing falls apart. So you kidnapped Luis Ortega. We were just going to scare him, hold him a couple days, get his wife to pay, then let him go. Nobody was supposed to get hurt. Patricia Hendricks died of a heart attack from the stress of your scam, Torres said flatly. You killed her. Webb's face crumpled. I didn't know. We didn't mean for anyone to die. But they did. And you kept going. How much did you steal total? Webb was silent for a long moment. About $350,000 over 18 months. Split between 5 of us. $350,000. Dozens of families terrorized. 1 woman dead. 1 man kidnapped. All because someone decided fake authority was easier than real work. By evening, all 5 members of the fake security crew were in custody. The young guy Torres shot would recover and face charges. 15 families were identified as victims, with financial records providing clear evidence of extortion. Torres estimated they'd recover maybe 40% of the stolen money. I stood outside the sheriff's station as the sun set, watching Torres and Morrison coordinate with the district attorney about charges. My phone buzzed. Megan, Dad? Ashley's mom saw the news. They're saying you helped catch some criminals? I smiled despite my exhaustion. Yeah, sweetheart, that's accurate. Are we safe now? We're safe. You can come home. Thank God. I miss my room. A pause. Dad? Are you okay? Like, really okay? I thought about the past few weeks. The threats, the home invasion, the confrontations. Yeah, honey, I'm really okay. Good. Because you promised me boring, remember? I laughed, surprising myself. I did, didn't I? I'll work on that. After we hung up, Sergeant Morrison approached. Hell of a case, Detective Cole. We couldn't have broken this without you. I was just protecting my family. You did more than that. She handed me a business card. We could use someone like you. Civilian consultant position with major crimes. Part-time, flexible hours, decent pay. We get cases like this more often than you'd think. Organized fraud targeting HOA communities, elder exploitation, financial crimes. Your experience would be invaluable. I looked at the card, feeling something shift inside me. I'll think about it. You do that. She started to walk away, then turned back. Cole, what you did, that's the job. Not the badge or the uniform, but standing between predators and prey. Some guys never figure that out. But you've always known. After she left, Torres appeared with a beer. Celebration? Something like that. I took the beer. Thanks for trusting me on this. You were right about everything. That's good police work, Jack. So, what's next? Back to retirement? I thought about Megan's question. About Morrison's offer. About Patricia Hendricks and Luis Ortega and all the others who'd been victimized because predators thought they could hide behind fake badges. Maybe, I said, or maybe I'll stick around, help out when you need it. Turns out retirement's boring. Torres grinned. I was hoping you'd say that. 3 weeks later, I stood on my new front porch. The door had been replaced, watching Megan ride her bike down our quiet street. The neighborhood had slowly returned to normal. Fake security patrols were gone. The golf cart sat abandoned in HOA storage. Tom and Linda Brennan had slowly regained their confidence. Maria Ortega had Luis back home safe. Torres had brought me another case file yesterday, retirement community in Cottonwood, residents reporting aggressive building inspectors demanding fees for code violations. Sound familiar? I'd accepted Morrison's consultant position. Turned out what I needed wasn't retirement from police work, I just needed to choose my battles, to fight for people who couldn't fight for themselves. That evening, after Megan went to bed, I sat on my porch with a beer, watching the sunset paint the mountains amber. My new civilian consultant badge sat on the table beside me, different from my old detective shield, but same weight, same meaning. The job, I'd finally learned, wasn't about badges or uniforms or authority. It was about standing between predators and prey, about being the person who says, "Not here, not today," when evil comes calling. My phone buzzed. Text from Tom Brennan, "Neighborhood barbecue, this Saturday, you're the guest of honor. Least we can do." I typed back, "I'll bring the burgers." As darkness fell and stars emerged in the vast Arizona sky, I thought about Webb's last words during interrogation. We just wanted easy money. Nobody was supposed to get hurt. But people always get hurt when predators are allowed to operate unchecked. That's the lesson I'd learned over 17 years on the force and 3 weeks in Timber Ridge Estates. The predators would come again, they always do. New scams, new disguises, new ways to exploit fear and trust, but they'd find me waiting. Not as a retired cop trying to forget his past, but as someone who'd figured out what peace actually meant. It wasn't the absence of conflict. It was knowing you could handle whatever conflict came. I picked up my badge, turned it over in my hands, and clipped it to my belt. Somewhere in the darkness, another neighborhood was discovering their new security patrol wasn't what it seemed. But tomorrow, Torres and I would start hunting those predators. And when we found them, they'd learn what those fake cops in Timber Ridge learned. The worst door you can knock on is the one where someone knows exactly who you are and isn't afraid to do something about it.